The Omniologists Collective is a public forum group aimed at curating communication, perspectives, and progress. Recorded at our studio in Montclair, New Jersey, we're focused on bringing the local community together to discuss topics that are important to us. You can access our group and live streams through Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Omniologists Collective.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Omniologists Collective. I have some new people with me tonight, which is always so awesome. So if you'd like to say your name, say a little bit about yourself, anything that you want to just say, that's where we're aiming towards. But you can just talk to me.
All right, right on. So my name is Ray. I play as a solo musician in Jersey, in New York, Pennsylvania, wherever I can get shows. I play under the name Dead Language. And I'm also in the process of drawing a indie comic, a black and white hand-drawn comic about the daughter of Satan called Autumn Come Down. And I don't know, I'm really happy to be here. I think it's going to be fun.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just thinking about how, I'm sorry, my name is Barbara, for anyone that is just watching for the first time or doesn't know me from this group. And I just want to bring people together and talk about things. Because I'm seeing that it's really hard to do that nowadays outside, or that, like, the climate for it isn't as, like, supportive of that. So I'm happy to have a space. And that people have been feeling comfortable to come here. So if you ever want to talk with me, or be on one of these, or talk with us, or hang out with people, just come on.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Have you ever had anybody that's had complete opposite, I guess I want to say views to yours, but that's sort of, I guess,
We
to
have-
you, and I don't even know.
We do have some, like, for instance, I don't mean to call anybody out, I do have, I guess in the last episode we had a little, that's what makes it good, the discussions. Want to turn it down just a little bit?
Yes.
Just a little bit. Thank
I
you.
wanted to mention, actually, I would say I have a friend of mine who has the exact opposing views as me, who I hang out with kind of often lately, like,
He's one of our good friends.
yeah, and like, all we do is sit here and talk for like 2-3 hours trying to, like, debase each other's philosophies, which is like what you're supposed to do, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know?
It just seems like open discourse is like almost gone around upon nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like you're either like not talking about it, or people don't get violent. You know what I mean? Like nobody can really just simply have a dialogue about and simply accept the fact that people
There might
disagree.
be something different.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it's more the fear of violence than it is actual violence,
Okay, that's interesting.
What that like people don't want to communicate anymore. It's the fear of like being. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Especially with what's been. I feel like you go outside now and a lot of people are telling you to look for all the signs in another person that they might want to like kill you or something like immediately. Like especially if it's like me as a woman and what they tell us to like. If he looks at you this way, or if he like seems suspicious.
Okay, so let me ask, since you kind of moved it towards that direction.
That's just an example.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I was going to ask you, how, if you can, on a scale of 1 to 100, I know that's a really odd question, but how much would you say that fear is warranted? I guess we're going to start in that realm of being a female.
Like from an actual experience?
Right.
Because there have been experiences where I've been like followed home before on multiple occasions. 2 of them were in the city, but it was like at night, on like a Friday night. And it's just like, there's been situations where I know that it, like, I feel like there's like a natural, like, kind of instinct of like someone backs off or, doesn't, but I try not to judge, like, give that kind of judgment to every person I see unless I see some sort of other example to start feeling that way. Like, you immediately call me, like, sweetie, and I'm like, not cool with that. Like, I have a name, I'm another human. Just like, don't be throwing that like sweet talk at me. You're already on the wrong foot, so I already start building that kind of distrust in you.
Right.
Because I work at like a public job where like every type of person comes in, and I like, it's customer service. You can't really just like, oh man, I hate these kind of people, So I always try and figure out, there really is no reason to have that fear. We're bringing it back to people wanting trying to talk to each other. But I think it's also, now I'm going to bring in a different step to it, the like social media aspect. For the past how many number of years has it been forming like our own, what do I call it? Like our personality, like in a way, like on the internet. And a lot of that, it's like we don't want people to change that. So let's not engage in a conversation that might make us question all these things we've built up about ourselves over the years, whether it's like really believing in some sort of like, you know, QAnon thing, or it's like, that's why a lot of people are so rock solid in like being defensive on their stuff.
I think people get trapped in, what do they call those, echo chambers with social media especially. I mean, the way it's designed, the algorithms, I think, is designed to only pump out what you kind of want to hear after a while.
Definitely
And
allows for that.
Is that a bad thing? Yes and no. I think it, like in time we'll just see it kind of get worse.
Yeah.
Because it just seems like as much as we want to believe, we all like think for ourselves. Me personally, if I had to subscribe to any sort of conspiracy theory, I think that there are people above us that have sort of mastered the concepts, the ideas behind social manipulation. You know what I mean? And on a level where I think the common man couldn't really understand it. You know, I think that there have been corporations, there have been people doing studies for years and years and years.
I think it's because they expose our deepest like insecurities and desires about ourselves.
Absolutely.
You know?
And
so we don't want to face that.
Like, I almost think like what we're seeing now in politics and stuff is really sort of like just somebody who's like shamelessly stirring the pot.
Yeah.
We'll just say one thing to just sort of see both sides, you know, because there are just certain people in politics right now that just seem to be masterful at the art of making that divisiveness, that us versus them, that pointing out, well, it's them and versus us, despite the fact that, like,
there really is
we all kind of just want all the same things. We all have family and kids and husbands and wives and so on and so forth. And what is that? I don't know. You were talking about conspiracy theories earlier.
Oh.
I actually want to interject on
Please.
the origin of this
By
question.
the way, this is Chris, because he never introduced himself. This is Chris. He's been around since episode 1.
Since episode 1. Alright, so episode 0. Prior. Anyway,
yes,
so...
he's a founding helper.
Okay, so founding helper, yeah. Okay, so I think that, so the is the feeling warranted? Right, it was kind of like the base origin of the question of where we were at.
We just really ran into that.
That's good though, right? That means a good question. A good question takes you on this sort of like deep, nuanced like thing. Okay, so my view, or something I was taught, is that like it almost doesn't matter like whether or not it's warranted. It's a question is, are they actually feeling it or saying they're feeling it? You know. And then it's like that even is like, does that even matter? It's like what really matters is someone is bringing up this situation for like the reason. What's the origin or the reason for them bringing it up? So here are some origins of why someone would feel uncomfortable, like in public with another person, either male or female. I don't know. It's because they feel threatened by them, you know, because they've experienced something like that. Someone told them they should be worried. Or I think also people have instinctual biases. So, like, those are 3 reasons that could, like, I think that would warrant, it doesn't even matter if it warrants the feeling. The person might have the feeling, you know? And I think intelligence comes in, or, like, maturity, like, because there's intelligence and then there's maturity, and they like somehow like coexist. Like you can have a mature person and an intelligent person, and they can like sort of coexist on the same level, right? Whereas like an immature person and an intelligent person can, but a mature person and an immature person can't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like an intelligent person, I think, can like intermingle with a ton of this is totally tangential.
It's intelligence of other psychology. Like
I don't know.
Your own like understanding of how people just like think.
I don't know how the realm of intelligence works.
Yeah.
Though, you know, like because that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to escape this tangent because that's what we're going to get at. But anyway, so it's the
show
origin.
is made for tangents.
Yeah, it is. So it's about the origin of this feeling, and I think what's interesting and the reason why it keeps popping up for people is because the origin of who's telling us to worry about it is different. It's not just our school, community, families, television. It is now also our phone, right? It is now also our main source of information. It is also, that. Like, right? And so, like, that's the main different origin, right? It's like men have always been creepy.
It's an accelerant.
Women have always been manipulative, right? And, like, that's never going to change, right? Men are also manipulative. Women are also creepy, okay? But those things are never going to change. But what has changed this time is the loudspeaker is now even louder. You know, first it was like, you know, authority is your parents, and then it was your school, and then it was the cops, and then it was the army, and then it was the phone, and, you know, like, or the corporation or whatever. And so now those things are now so loud in your face, and they bring up those things every day because it is, quote unquote, triggering people to feel emotional. And when you're emotional, you're easily manipulated.
Right, absolutely.
Bam. And I think they're targeting our generation because our generation has been very sexually liberal, meaning millennials. Okay, how old are you?
29.
Okay, yeah. Okay, me too.
Yeah.
Great. So, yeah, they target our generation because I think that our generation was very sexually liberal, right? And so, like, that's why a lot of us, like, get shocked by, like, these conversations, you know?
It is true.
Yeah. So that's, like, my comment on that.
Well, so let me redefine the question just a little bit, because I guess when I meant by warranted, I didn't necessarily mean it on a personal level. I guess I meant more so on, like, let me give you an example. When I watch Fox News, you know,
right?
But, like, you know, because I enjoy watching the other side, so I watch Fox News. Just
like I told you, one of my buddies is, like, on the extreme other side. And, like,
so
you were insane.
I know they're, like, I know, and I hate to use that sort of concept of I know their arguments because I don't really.
Yeah. But you're listening to them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say I'm more liberal, but there are a lot of things I am conservative on. But anyway,
whatever that all means, you know.
I know, right?
It's
such a medium, like
yes.
weird. So, but, like, watching Fox News, sometimes I feel like the fears in which they have or are trying to instill or are within that sort of zeitgeist of their viewership and the people that run their company, I find those not to be warranted. And they talk about, like, Antifa's going to come and get you. People are black and liberals are going to, like, break into your home and they want to take your guns and this and this. Like, those type of things aren't warranted. And so I have a feeling, because I feel that way on this side, the liberal side, I guess you could say, I would have to assume that, and I talk to a lot of conservatives, you know, very strong conservatives that feel the same way when they look at our side, when they see the sort of liberal, like I've heard people use the defense, and I've had white people say this to me, which is really strange, but I've heard people say that liberals use racism to sort of manipulate minorities into voting for their side. They use that as sort of like I guess they race bait in a way. You know, they say, well, you know, the conservative side is racist, but if you come over here, you know, and so they see that on that side. They see that's not a warranted fear. Now all of a sudden, me as a black man, my fears in America aren't warranted, you know. So I guess I was more so saying from the perspective of the influence that that origin that you're talking about, that social media origin of us not really thinking we do think for ourselves to a certain extent, but we're also told how to think in a lot of ways.
So today's discussion is, do we think for ourselves?
Oh,
do we truly think for ourselves? Viewers, unfortunately I was not able to set the calling thing, so you can comment and we'll discuss your ideas.
Oh, the pain.
But that's a great one. Thank you.
Pain is deep.
But yeah,
but that's a rabbit hole.
I think it might be. It's pretty much a little bit of both at this point.
All right, so I think we created the internet, right? Okay, so I think the reasons why things are created, like, people can say they know. Maybe the people who were there know. Maybe, but it's like I it's hard to like really truly like give an accurate portrayal of history and even like a week after.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
You know the greatest quote I've ever. My girlfriend was a history major. She always says to me, "History is written by the winners."
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And
definitely is.
Yeah, I actually like have been working on writing a song called "Rewriting History," which is all about like I personally am very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not cautious, but inquisitive, or you know what I mean? Like agnostic, I guess, when it comes to historical events and how we know about them.
Yes.
You know, how we're told, how we're taught them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I think about how, like, we're all old enough to remember 9/11 for the most
Mm-hmm.
part.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, like, witnessing it on TV, or just the sort of...
I actually
you know?
walk around now,
Mm-hmm.
and I imagine it happening. Like I started a job in Hoboken recently, and I'm like across the water, and I'm just like, oh Jesus.
Yeah, I feel like everybody gets
like
that.
but I didn't live this close when that happened. I lived farther away.
Me too. I was in Ohio.
Yeah. So like, wow, man.
But like,
Tricky.
can you imagine how they're going to teach that
Oh,
to the
right?
younger generation, especially now? I mean,
I remember when I was already in high school how they were teaching it, because we got
Really?
new books in high school.
Gosh.
Yeah, we got new books just when I was leaving, and then in the history books, I remember just skipping straight to the new stuff. Because I'm like, what are they going to tell me about what I'm doing today?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's already like, I don't know. It's like it's hard to tell if it's biased or if it's meant to be delivered plain and information is removed. I think it's not necessarily what they tell you,
Like, it's just
right? Because it's told to be told plain, right?
Yeah.
And it's more so about what the things they don't tell you. You see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
they can't say, "Oh, we were just dumb. We didn't know about those other things." You know,
Yeah.
and we didn't know about those other
Yeah.
things. Oops. Or I think it's like, no, it's like we don't want, you know,
Well, nowadays, the
we don't
problem I
want
think is
people to know
that,
those things.
especially in schools, because
Yeah.
obviously I work in them,
Yeah.
I do think that, like, because young children, like very young children, have access to social media now. You know, a lot of them. I see, like, these kids with, like, the huge iPhone X was the big ass one, like just as a toy to have. But some of these kids, like, you know, they're like on these things and they're like really young, and I would think that they would like just find the truth with what's like so easily available on there, that like schools are just giving you the bare minimum to just pass the test,
Right.
so that their school doesn't get shut down. You know, the whole bureaucracy of it, nothing to do with teaching the kids. The kids are smarter than the adults right now.
Yeah, that's gonna be so creepy very soon.
A lot of, it's like really, even stuff that I'm like, what is this? And like, I'm not, you know.
Do you really think that's the case, though? Or is it sort of common knowledge?
They're going to be masters of what I call the
yeah.
Hegelian dialectic. Okay? So
I
I don't
hear
call
about
it,
this.
I don't call it that. I think many people call it that, right? But or I don't know. I may be misusing the phrase, but what I mean by it is this. I think that everyone's caught up in a massive sort of word game, right? Because like all of our problems, I believe, which is something this philosopher Wittgenstein, I think that's how you say his name, also believes, that we're just caught up in a narrative word game, trying to make excuses to attain power from each other, without having to do too much work to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So most of our problems, especially today, are narrative word game problems. Right? Like, you can have a complete tragedy happen to you on the internet, but you keep doing the exact same thing over and over again in reality.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's like where like the simulation aspect of reality, where everyone jokes about, comes into play, I think, today. Right? Because then there is a simulation sort of going on, but that happens on the social sphere in general throughout history. Like in the social sphere, you have a life, and then there's reality. Right? That's like the lie people keep up.
Yeah.
Certain people benefit from people believing that the social sphere is the truth, right? And that's why they sell you the social sphere,
Yeah.
right? But then there's like nature, which is like definitely like doesn't care about you at all, and that's why you turn to the social sphere, because you think it cares about you, but it doesn't. It's exploiting you usually. That was also tangential. Anyway,
That
so
just blew my mind.
yeah, so well, that's how I don't know. You know, my view. I'm a agnostic, anarchistic, existentialist fan. So like, my view is like my godlike view is that I think all things are God. Like the infinity thing, I totally play into that idea because that's like what else would be God but the infinity of all things. So it's like to me that means like the mangoes, you, the PS4 controller, all God, right? So like how you participate with all of it is like your sacred duty. You know what I mean? Like to like be curious. Yeah, dude, Taoism is the way, bro. Right, literally.
I've been reading a lot of like Alan Watts. And,
I think Alan Watts is just really good at talking.
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Well, obviously, no offense, you have this
Right.
white guy spewing like
Yeah.
Chinese master stuff.
Right, he just like sold like Eastern philosophy to white people, and
Yeah,
Well,
but I mean,
still,
at
it's
a,
like-
at a time where the West didn't have it before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I mean,
exactly.
for the time, it was
Yeah.
he was
Mm-hmm.
definitely
Yeah.
influential. But,
and then anarchistic because I think that like politically, I don't think that anyone can be the grand authority.
Mhm.
I think authority is entirely situational.
I was just saying, we have people watching.
Hey
So-
everybody, authority is entirely situational,
Mhm.
and I don't know how it's decided. Sometimes, and that's one. This is where this tangent came from. I can't tell how it's decided, right? Like in a situation of power, sometimes like extreme fascism happens naturally. People don't like it, no one likes it, but that had just occurred all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden like communistic things happened, right? And then whatever, like we give meaning to the history. Like it happened, and people were like, no, that definitely happened. I was there. It was fucked up. Like I was there. Like the fascism happened. I don't know why, but it did, right? And like some of us think we know why, and we think that we were important in that situation. But I think that maybe, to some degree, we are just biologically reacting to the environment, and our brain is like giving us narrative like purpose to keep on like striving for the thing. Right? That kind of makes sense on a biological level. Like, you can't really claim to know how all of history came to this moment. When you walk outside and there's, like, utter chaos everywhere. Like, you can predict things sort of immediately because, like, we've existed for a certain period of time. And you've survived a certain bit of experiences to be able to predict. But I think people cannot truly predict what is going to happen. Like,
Where I think we give ourselves that duty, which isn't really natural, so that's all I'm going to say.
But and
You know,
the parts
like-
of you that do predict what's going to happen react without you thinking about it, right?
Or we expect the bigger system to, like, know and tell us, you know?
And that's where you buy into the public sphere. That's just people
People
telling
ask
you
a
they
screen
know.
what the weather is outside, you
Yeah.
know?
Whereas
So-
if you actually spent, like, let's say 2 weeks outside trying to understand weather, I bet you could tell me when it's going to rain. I bet you if you, like,
Absolutely.
knew
Okay,
where
I
to
see.
go at the highest point to look around and, like, think about weather for 2 weeks, you could be a pretty decent meteorologist. Enough to be like, yo, that's scary. I'm going to go live underground for, like, a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But instead, we go to the screen for our answer. You know? Because that's, like, the public sphere.
So are we thinking for ourselves?
See?
Bam!
Are
Nice.
we
Bringing it
thinking for
together.
ourselves?
That was awesome.
Absolutely.
That was great.
I'm not sure if we are.
But yeah, existentialist because no one has the right answer. It's like existing is the most important thing, and experience is the most important thing. And the more you experience new stuff, the closer you're gonna get to whatever is going on. But you're never gonna know.
Yeah.
And that's like sucks. But it's also like like they say in mythology, being infinite or finite is what gives your life that awesome boost of like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, you will never live long enough to know what's going on. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So just do it.
Let me ask you that because I think I would define myself as an existentialist.
Right? I think that's like the general mood
Yeah.
that like people are in.
But doesn't it make you sad when you meet people that never really question anything about their existence or the bigger
I
picture?
think they're in pain.
It's so hollow.
Really?
I think
Yeah,
they're
It's
that's
like
what I
it's
think, too.
isolating because it's very hollow. It's
I don't
like,
know if it's painful because I almost think ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if you guys want to dive into the religious rabbit hole. Like, I love religion. I think it fascinates me, and I study religions.
Yeah.
But I'm not a religious person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, like, you know, I think there's a certain blissfulness in willful ignorance. So if you sort of willfully accept a story that you're openly ignorant about,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that does make your life better. You know, if you have to tell yourself that, you know, oh, my cousin who died, they're in a better place, and that makes you feel better. I can't take that away from you. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time,
well, you just can't anyway, because that's what makes them feel better.
right?
Well, that's
it
their own
cures that
autonomous
psychosis in them. You know, and
systems.
people will believe anything to cure whatever crazy psychosis is happening in their brain.
So here's the thing.
I think.
If the question is, do we think for ourselves? Then here's the hardest thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we might have to backtrack a little bit and define what is reality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really big thing right now, because
Yeah. Great.
in politics, people always want to talk about like Donald Trump is mean, Donald Trump is this, he does this, immigrants do this and this. I think the one thing, me personally, my biggest beef with Donald Trump doesn't have anything to do with what people are talking about. My biggest beef is he's literally made everybody almost redefine what we think of as truth.
Yeah.
What we see as almost reality to a point. Because if a bunch of scientists can get together and they go, okay, we're like 99% sure that, you know, all these facts and so on and so statistics, we've studied it, you know, like we have
I think
a
you are
margin of
giving him
error.
too much credit.
Well,
I agree that this has happened.
mhm,
Okay, the sphere in which the Hegelian dialectic,
mhm.
right? Again, I don't know if I'm using it right, but in how I defined it earlier, right, is the general conversation, the general linguistic situation we're in, right?
So it's control.
It's like
about control.
it's like not even control because it's about belief, right? It's like how many people can you get to believe in this thing?
So it's not so much telling
Right.
someone to do something, it's having them act upon what they believe is their own free will
Yeah.
of belief, that it's been crafted
Yeah.
and handed, like, you know.
Yeah. So again, I'm like an anarchistic thinker. Okay, so like
Mhm.
I don't actually have a president. I don't have a president.
Mhm.
Like me. Like I don't live in a world where there is a president. I live in a world where there's nature and there's society and there's people and there are animals and there's a situation going on called society, which like I think happens naturally. Right? Communities happen to survive. It happens everywhere for different reasons, because usually influenced by the environment they're in.
Also
Okay.
influenced by the will
Yeah,
to survive.
and then the Hegelian dialectic, which is the conversation which created that community. Right? Again, I don't know if I'm using that phrase appropriately, but the dialogue, that's what I'm going to call it from now on, because that's probably more correct.
Mm-hmm.
But that dialogue is what keeps the community like in shape so that it can continue functioning. And so right now, who controls our dialogue? Definitely the internet. The internet controls our dialogue. And Donald Trump is the first, this is where you can give him some credit, I think, most recent president to masterfully use all of the contemporary tools to get people convinced of his like image, public image, right? Which people bought into because it was funny, it was made people angry, it was divisive. People, I think, will love conflict. No, it's not even that they love conflict; is that they're so sedated that they want conflict. Like
Right.
they're so
Mhm.
conflict
It's
sucks, right? But they don't actually have any.
Which is why it's so
Right.
hypocritical.
So they're like, "Oh, I love conflict, I love it," and then the moment they have it, shut down, just like completely
yeah,
utter
of
shut down.
course.
Right. All right. Sorry to all those people that I just mocked. I love you. All right. But anyway, so the dialogue, right? And like right now, there's a control of the dialogue,
Mhm.
right? One reason why I participate in things like this, right, is because I want to be like a wrench in the dialogue. I want to be like, what about this crazy thing? Like my friend thinks fairies are real. Like, you know, like, so I don't think that's real at all. But by being able to open the gateway to have a place where someone can talk about fairies, maybe someone can talk about some real deep political shit that they're too afraid to talk about.
Well, yeah.
You see, and that's like the most important thing. Whereas now you can't even like mention certain angles of thought
Yeah.
without being exiled. And to me, that is like the red
Censorship of
flag
discussion.
of evil. That is like, you know, like I'm like
The thought
Voltairean in
police.
that
It's
view.
1984.
I want my enemies to say stupid things, so I have something to laugh at today. You know what I mean? Or I have something to like give fortification for my view, right? So for me, like, I have this terrible, terrible habit of like and I think it's like an insecurity plus like an ego thing, that I do tend to like hang around people who have opposing views of me, because I want to combat with my views with theirs until my views are chiseled enough so that I can either walk away with what they have to give me, or I can be like, I know what I'm doing, I can just walk away from that. Like, I don't know if that's egotistical, I don't know if that's survival, I don't know if that's just me enjoying philosophy. I don't know.
I think that's probably it.
Terrible habit, because
Well,
I
but
get
you're also-
surrounded by awful people
No,
sometimes,
I
you
think
know?
it's critical thinking, and I think
Yeah.
that's what's key. And I think a lot of people lack, because they don't teach us that in school. They
No,
don't
they
teach
don't.
you to, hey, hang out with that kid that looks different from you.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot from that kid that didn't grow up in the same way that you. I
Well,
never learned that
learn a
until like
lot.
when I was a grown up, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And that's
Um,
way more fun.
They try and keep you
Me,
quiet in
absolutely.
class too.
It's so much more fascinating. Though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it makes me almost sad to like meet people that live in sort of like a bubble. They're
Yes.
surrounded by people that look the same way that they do. They act the same way. They believe the same things. And like I remember I work at this like call center, and my girlfriend was like getting hit on by this guy. And eventually, like, he kind of started talking to me a little bit once he found out that we were dating. And, like, I started asking him, I was like, Ryan, are you ever good? I didn't get to use his name. But he's not going to watch this.
Love you, bro.
No, he hates me. So, I was like, Ryan, like, you know, you ever been outside of Jersey? You know what I mean? Have you ever seen the world? Like, you're so strong in your convictions, your political beliefs, your religious views. Like, you know, like, what do you know? He's like, no, I've never left Jersey and I never will. Like, I don't need to. Everything I need
No
is
one
right
questions
here.
their comfort. Like
Yeah.
no one like, you know, you're allowed to choose that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Sure, and to each their own. I mean, I
But
can't
like,
knock
yeah.
it, but, like, there's a part of me that just goes, and I hate it because I find that sort of judgment in me, but I just want to grab him and go, dude, there's so much out there.
That's
like,
the other
there's
thing,
so
right?
much to
Yeah.
experience. You just want to shake somebody
Yeah.
and just, you know, but
Yeah.
that's critical thinking. That's
To me,
literally
that's-
being able to not only look at the microcosm that is your world and look at the macro. Be able to not just look at, like, your circle, be able to look outside of the circle and go, holy shit, there's a lot
Right.
outside of there. Like, I need to check that out, you know?
And also people, there's like something in in changing as a person. I mean, I don't know, personally, I feel like from, like, I don't know if this happens for everybody, right? When you become a teenager and then you become like an adult, you go through those phases, but you learn something. And a lot of those people that are in that situation, I don't think like have that extra to move. I'm sure they're kind of like, you know what I mean?
I don't know.
Like getting like, how do I explain this? Like, not a lot of people I don't think would be able to talk like this together
Yeah.
about these types of things unless
Yes.
they've been through experiences.
Right.
You know, and those, you know, a lot of times, yeah.
That's
what
I was
I'm
gonna
trying to
say.
get at. I'm sorry.
I think
I'm like,
like what's happening, or this is what the unfortunate truth is, that all of a sudden you have to become the medium for that person, and it sucks when they're shutting you out or like doing something in which is like, you know, it's like not necessarily like hurting you, but it's like putting you in a questionable situation when you could have been the medium to open his worldview.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like that's the unfortunate part of conservatism and coming from the Brave New World. I think we used to live in, like, you ever read the book Brave New World?
Absolutely.
The people were sedated by their pleasure, right? So like we came from that world, and now we're entering into a world where we're struck by our fear. You know, we're frozen by our fear, and we're like the 1984. So like we're moving into that world, or we are there, or whatever.
So let me ask you, because you did bring up 1984 earlier. Do you feel at the moment, or at least we're heading into a point where political correctness is becoming sort of an uncontrollable sort of censorship in that direction of sort of like almost like a police state, I guess? Or,
So I've been reading a book that was, I think, published recently. Is a collection of essays by Jean Baudelaire. Is that how you say his last name? Okay,
Yeah.
philosopher, like a French philosopher. And it's called Agony of Power. And he wrote these essays back in 2005. And he was commenting on, I guess, at the time, like, the Bush presidency or something like that. But he is talking about this, like, destruction of reality. And that the new kind of power will be when those who we assume are in power, so obviously like the systems at play, they are denouncing their own behaviors before the public has a chance to. So it's kind of like we've already lost any essence of why to do anything else. Like the will to continue trying to establish some sort of like reality when they're literally telling us to our faces all the things we would have said about them. They're taking that from us, I think. So
do you think they're taking it from us, or did we take that from them with the internet? Because I feel like with the internet,
well, it's like
nowadays,
mocking us now.
You're right.
Like every day,
You're
the
right.
stuff that, you know, we assume they're gonna do,
Yeah.
they do the next day, and then they even say it word for word how we predicted it to like rub in our face that like doesn't matter what you say because it's kind of all an illusion right now. We keep selling you the same stuff you want to buy. You don't question it. You literally are not standing up and like actually trying. Like I always get this example from. I know this makes me sound terrible, and people have criticism about my feelings about this, so I'm going to just say it. So I went to the first Women's March, but I went to the one that was in the city, and I remember the energy was great there, but they, like, blocked off where the Trump Tower was, and I'm like, and we were following police orders, and people were literally afterwards just throwing their signs away in the trash and just walking to get dinner, and I was just like... The whole thing was kind of like I was like, we're not gonna just like storm the tower and like get all up in there and like who the fuck? There's so many of us,
Right.
but we just all followed the police and then just went home and took our selfie pictures. And I was like, you literally just commodified this whole thing, and I'm pissed off because I know that they're gonna do what they were doing with the abortion shit happening lately. And I was like, oh my god, that's it. We just like gave it to them in that moment. The first time the whole world, millions of people, like crowds and seas of people, and we couldn't do anything. You just like laid down at the line right there, like
And
there.
I had the
That's
exact
it.
same experience at
Sorry, I
Occupy
got
Wall
really
Street.
mad.
Like I was someone who went to Occupy Wall Street. I had the exact same experience on Fifth Avenue. Literally a sea of people. On Fifth Avenue. I could look down one way and I was like, oh my god, that is so many people. I couldn't believe it. I was standing on one of those like newspaper mailboxes, like holding onto a pole and like looking around by Union Square, and there was another sea of people at Union Square, and literally there was like maybe 20 police inside the huge swarm, and they pointed to the left, and everybody went left, and then it was over because like everyone was just so afraid of like what was going on. To me, like, is a city just a public prison? That's like how I felt in that moment. Like when I realized this, like all they've done is they've homogenized all of our view into one place, so it's so easy. They could literally wipe out our entire political view right now.
And that's
in this one
1984 to
spot.
me, essentially, back
Yeah.
to your question. Like,
Yeah, like they sold
I
us
felt
the
that.
opposition. They always sell you the opposition, so that they can control it, right? Like, and that's what happened to people, for instance, who believe in like the alt-right, and also, in my opinion, people who believe in a lot of left views as well. Like people, like I consider myself a very extremist leftist, because I'm an anarchist, right? But apparently that doesn't make me a leftist anymore. I don't know. That's some nonsense I don't
You're an
understand.
Antifa, right? I guess.
But
Just
I'm
by
not even that.
association,
But I'm
right.
not even
I
that.
know.
You know? Right? Exactly. I don't even know. Where
no,
I
you have to
stand
fit
anymore.
into one of the pre-described boxes. No
Right.
thinking for
Right,
yourself.
Right. And so
Stop
right
it.
now there are pre-described boxes because we want a group to feel good about being about, like we're doing something meaningful, right? Like
It's our new nationalism.
yeah, like and like that's why they're being sold to us, you know, like in this sort of way, and like people caught on to them because they didn't spend like 20 years looking at the political dialogue that's been actually going on, who's actually in power. They just like were actually just saw it on their sidebar on Facebook over and over and over again, and they're like, wow, if I'm a smart person, I should know things about politics.
Really well edited video now.
Yeah.
You gotta do something.
Right.
That's the worst.
Yeah, exactly. But it's good and bad. It's like, or no, it's inevitable. There we go. It's neither good nor bad. It's inevitable that because there are people out there pushing it, that there are going to be people who are there to hear it, and how they react to it is, you know.
Are you familiar with Edward Bernays?
I don't think I've heard the name before.
So he was, I guess, the lead guy behind the mass propaganda movement when we started doing that kind of stuff here. He was Freud's nephew, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So together they like mastermind, like, you know, I think they were doing cigarette campaigns for women to get women to smoke.
Was he the advertising guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've
Right?
heard the story, I think.
So I mean, why not? If you think about the way, like, you know, we go about that type of
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the way corporate America is sort of just put on this pedestal above everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would have to think with the sort of rise of industrialization and corporate entities, and then us sort of considering, by law, that corporations are now people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to think these people have been refining and crafting how they sell us, not just products. So one book that changed my life was No Logo by Naomi Klein.
I have a copy here.
I read it like
Disappointing.
I read it in late high school. Literally changed my life. It just, but like
Music's my ears,
yeah, like one thing about that book that she talks about is how fuck, where was I going?
Sorry.
How corporations don't sell products; they sell ideas.
Yeah.
It's not like it's especially here in America. It's not even about quality. Like, you don't buy Nikes, you don't buy Kanye shoes for quality. You buy it. There's an idea behind it, you know. And that's sort of like the established world. I think us just being as privileged as we are in consumer culture, but it's just funny. I just honestly think that I'm one of those people. I don't like advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I don't like American advertising, but I've never been out of the countryside. But I just think it's sort of mind control, and especially when you watch things that are targeted towards kids.
Oh, of course.
Me and some friends were having a conversation the other day. My girlfriend's best friend is she's I think a preschool teacher, and she was telling me, oh yeah, I'm gonna be. She said the name of it, like Easy Shark or something like that, for Halloween, and it's based on some kid song that's really popular.
Oh, I think that's MK Ultra, the Baby Shark song.
Baby Shark. Okay, so
Definitely
that's what we were
MK
talking
Ultra.
about. Because she told me, she's like, every time that song comes on, kids just lose their mind. And I'm thinking to myself, and we kind of started talking, I was like, do you think, like, there's the same thing for adults? Because there are certain things that just are geared towards kids, and they have to have it figured out by now. And for some reason, kids just go, oh.
Yeah.
And I think, like, adults have the same thing. It's just, for us, it's not as subtle as us drooling like zombies.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I've seen adults go crazy over it, too, which is, like, on TV, and I'm just like,
yeah.
you know, it's that beat, the very drony type of hypnotic, come on.
Yeah.
The first time I heard that, I'm just like, MK Ultra, turn this off now. I see the kids jumping up and down, oh my god.
Yeah. It's weird.
Music got me into realizing, like, this kind of stuff. Like, I know someone who their claim to fame was their parents were like jingle writers, and of course their parents taught them how to write jingles, which manipulate masses into liking their stuff. So now they're a mass manipulator out in the world, you know what I mean, like doing whatever they want with their music. I'm like, wait, how many people do this?
Like
all the time.
Like, if you said the band's name?
No, I don't know. Come on, you know, I'm not here to start beef, you know, I'm here to talk about philosophy.
Okay.
But like, you know, so, but that's it. It's like, there is obviously a psychological response to certain sounds, dude. Like, I hear one sound, I'm like crying. I'm like, I'm not crying, I'm tough. And then I hear, like, I'm crying. You know, like, that's it. Yeah. Right, or like, I hear like a certain breakdown, I'm ready to punch anything that is in my face. You know what I mean? It depends. And it's just like, I don't know why.
That's why they're always trying to subvert
Well, not
the
yet.
arts.
I mean, that's like what I'm interested in right now, you know?
But I don't even necessarily mean music evoking emotion. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but I'm talking like using music, or whether it be sounds, definitely with images, you know what I mean? But
Oh no,
using
but
those
sound is just that
patterns.
one angle. No, they
Can I
take
link
every
this to, like,
single
some
sense that
feminist
you
stuff?
got to manipulate it into believing
some
whatever.
stuff about that.
What? Yeah, go
The
ahead.
Petite Meller thing.
Oh man.
So I posted something a while ago on this page because it was something I was just thinking about one night, and I needed to say something about it because I felt like I was the only person who was thinking this. So I was on YouTube looking for music, but sometimes I just look at the aesthetic of a video because I'm just trying to put like together some just like random music. And I come across Petite Meller, who's an artist I've never heard of before, but it kind of looked like Wes Anderson-y. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Good production. Music is so catchy, but it was so creepy because it's this. Apparently, she's like 30, almost 40 years old, but she looks like a very small child. Like, that's just her physique is of a very small child, and in her music videos she's dressing up as like a child and doing very sexual, you know, things. And her music is kind of about the same thing. She's had like some of her songs are titled Baby Love, one of them's titled, what's the other one, Barbaric, and it's about, you know, it's very sexual. And then some of her songs are titled Conspiracy. One of them is titled America.
So does she, do you think she uses the look?
Well, she also has children in her videos too, like actual children.
Okay.
Interjecting these very sexual scenes of like these very like underage, like pubescent women and actual children in the videos. And I'm looking, and a lot of people love it. She won like some award on like MTV or something. Like she's like a big person. I'm sorry I don't know like what's like on MTV, but like I was surprised, especially with like this like very like these pedophilia things going on in the news and whatever, and how you would think that would be like anti-sexualization of children, but it's like mad being promoted. And I'm seeing a lot of like children like or young teeny bopper-esque pop stars right now that are grown people dressing up as very young people and like having very sexual music, which I don't mean to sound prude, but I'm just like, I felt uncomfortable watching it and listening to it, even as like a woman who, you know, I'm definitely for like empowerment of living how you want to live and be who you want to be, but sometimes I'm like, is this like having a hidden message? This is like some person from LA, like I don't, you know, a lot of people, you know, they got some stuff going on out there.
Open too. I mean, I'll watch any kind of horror movie. I'll watch people get hacked up. I'm, you know, pretty open with my sexuality and such. But like anything having to do with children is kind of where I like draw the line.
It's like
so I think I would feel awkward watching something like that too, especially if it's like even just subtly like hinting at some sort of pedophilia like ideals. Like it's like okay, I don't know. That's strange.
See, it's art, and obviously I'm someone that's like, I don't want to censor art, which is why I'm like, I'm okay with it existing, so that I can say this about it.
Right.
Because you can listen to it. I sometimes have the song stuck in my head because it's catchy, and I'm like, because I don't like it.
We can to keep this local, and to sort of keep this on topic, kind of having to do with art, censorship, so on and so forth. Dingbats. Are you guys familiar with dingbats?
I've heard what's been going on lately with
Talk
that.
to us about that. That's happening today, right?
I don't know. I
heard it got canceled, but we should talk about it.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, we're talking about a local venue.
Yeah, it's Dingbats is located in Clifton, New Jersey, and supposedly, from what I understand, there's a big like bill of about 6 or 7 like metal, thrash, death metal bands, I guess, booked at this venue, and it turns out, I guess, supposedly some of the bands, or 1 or 2 of the bands, heavily pushes sort of anti-Semitic themes in their music and their merchandise and so on and so forth. I guess the venue or the promoter, whoever, got a lot of messages from people. And basically, either a band or 2 was kicked off, or the whole show's canceled. I'm not quite clear. I did see at least one of the bands was kicked off of the show. But I don't know. There was a very big discussion in one of the music forums on Facebook or whatever, and that's actually how I found out about it. And, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't like anti-Semitic things neither. But, like, where do we draw the line? Like, do I go out of my way to make sure that they don't play that venue, or do I just not go to the show? Now, those people are going to exist. They're going to have those mindsets whether or not I shut their show down anyway. There's going to be other bands or venues that book them. we might even got them exposure for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like one of those weird things where I understand wanting to sort of shut down those sort of like ways of thinking or those sort of like disgusting, almost philosophies in a way. I mean, that's, you know, I guess those come from some sort of philosophical way of thinking. And you can almost say that about anything. Like anybody that you kind of disagree with, like there are a lot of people that are afraid now to say things because they think, oh, I'll lose my job if I express how I really feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird time.
It is a weird time.
Yeah. Highly police stated each other.
Yeah, right?
There
Well,
you
that's
go.
the point. All right, but I've got two things to say about this. One, I think that, like,
Matt's watching Heart.
of course, yep. So, like, again, I'm an anarchistic thinker, so I think that conflict is inevitable. I think that the people who feel that they need to participate in a conflict over their views should, right? That's why people like don't like anarchists, because I'm telling someone who, like, do you feel deeply about this? Maybe you should do something about it. To me, that's how you weed out people who actually believe in things versus people who may be mentally ill, but then that puts people in danger. But that's why you have a strong community. You know, whatever. So
Okay.
whatever. Totally tangential, but like I think that conflicts are good. They're inevitable, and I think in the artistic space, that's where they are supposed to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Okay, so should two bands with hateful views, should bands with hateful views be able to play your venue? That's up to you, buddy. You know? And if they go there, what happens when they say hateful stuff? Do you allow conflict or nay? You know? It is now your responsibility to be the subverter of the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the venue, if they decide to, they need to be aware that a lot of people might show up and conflict will occur, and they just have to be okay with that, right? And that's where these bands with hateful views are birthed. They're birthed in places that allow their behavior, right? So,
Interesting.
right? Yeah, right? Which is like good and bad, because amazing things are birthed out of places that they could not have existed otherwise, or whatever, you know? So it's like, that's just the yin and yang of it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, again, it comes back to the origin. I've talked to people who have, like, again, alt-right views and who, like, have this, like, weird fear of Jewish people, which I think is, like, I'm anti-religious, pro-spirituality. I think everyone is who's a millennial. But anyway, so I think that there's another original fear. What about those people do you hate? Which is from the alt-righty people I've talked to, they think they're being manipulated by the powers that be, who have all the power and manipulate the masses. Like, duh, there's gonna be someone who's trying to do that anyway. Who cares, like, what their origin is from? They suck. We should find them and punch them and get them out of the way. Like, I don't care about their views. You can look at how their views or their influences got them to where they are, but you cannot blame their views or influences for being that person. So like I'm not gonna go kill Stephen King for writing the book Rage because some kid, like, I know there's this controversy or something where some kid read this book or short story called Rage by Stephen King and then committed some violence, maybe. Like, there's some story like that. I'm not gonna go kill anyone who reads Rage or likes Rage or, like, considers themselves #1 fan of the book Rage, that they, like, want to write books like Rage, right? Or Stephen King. I'm not gonna kill any of those people,
It's like Inception,
right? Even though I'm super pissed that this kid committed an act of violence and hurt me and my friends and my community, right? Like, that's how insane it is. Like, it's just like, and it's just that they're hurt. They're hurting too. Like, people who commit hate also hurt. That's, like, my view. Like, it's not only the victims of hate, but the haters themselves who also need to be rehabilitated. But no one wants to take that responsibility because that's actual work and actual self-sacrifice that people don't want to commit during our age of sedation. You know what I mean? So again, in the art space, those
our
things...
friend's here. We have another guest coming on.
I gotta go open the door. Anyway.
Answer. Hi. Hello.
Hello? Nice.
Hey Chris, it's Roger.
Okay, I'm coming.
Join you guys.
Nice. I'm coming to open the door. All right, in the artistic space, this is where these things should occur.
I'm gonna open the door.
And the person who facilitates the space is now responsible for the conflict. That's what I believe, right? As someone who was responsible for an artistic space, I personally am okay with being responsible for the conflict because I'm an anarchist. If someone is going to talk about their hate, they can talk about their hate. They can even play a song about their hate. But the moment there is, like, to me, hate expresses itself truly through act, like, of real conflict, which is like, it's not even violence. Violence is, like, I think, manipulated aggression. Right? That's what I think violence is. When you are committing an act of violence to manipulate, or like an act of aggression to manipulate, that's violence, right? So it's like, sometimes, like, you know, some person, like, is sick for whatever reason, and they're, like, really aggressive that day, and they punch someone. Are they a violent person? No, I don't know. They're sick.
You might have the wrong house number.
All right, I'm gonna check it out. But they, like, you know, it might be totally situational to why that person was aggressive that day, or like, someone came and stole stuff from your house, and you went to go fight them, and, like, to get your stuff. Did you defend yourself and do an act of aggression, right? Or did you, like, or defense even, or did you commit an act of violence? Huh?
Can you go get him a call?
Yeah, I'm gonna go figure this out.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my stance on that. I think, like, that's, like, really where the conversation should be, but there are no art spaces who are, like, talking about that.
And that's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm also doing this.
I'm gonna figure this out.
That's, like, what I'm trying to do with my zine.
Okay.
You know, in a way. Because, again, I think this comes back to what you were saying about people that stay in specific groups and, you know, they don't expand their experiences. Is that I feel the same in the art scene, where it's like, obviously it's going to be heavily influenced by this, like, concept of aesthetic, which is, like, I think, like, a meta thing we've been kind of, or maybe not so, but I think with being able to show it through social media, it's even more solidified into our reality, this, like, aesthetic. Like, there's people who, like, I'm always thinking it's interesting that these young people, again, like, teenagers and whatnot, can make so much money off social media. That's, like, a brand new, like, thing, you know? These, like, very young people, just through social media, making a lot of money and doing product advertising or all that other stuff, but it's also just still keeping the same herd, same type of people in the same kind of spheres that they're in. So what I try and do with my art projects, at least this one, is try to get people that I just like as artists, regardless of, like, what kind of art you do or, like, where you're coming from or what aesthetic you, like, have or establish as an artist. I just think it's important to just, like, give a platform to have kind of, like, anything goes type of situation in terms of that. I don't know. What do you get from going somewhere where everything's just the same? What kind of conversations? Yeah, like, how can you talk about that after a while?
Yeah.
So.
Oh man, there's nothing more boring than conformity. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I get very, very bored doing the same thing.
But for some people, that's like their comfort.
That's true.
It's a safety.
Yeah.
You know, knowing what tomorrow's going to be like. And you never have to worry because you know what the end of the week is going to be like. Because it's just so monotonous.
I don't know, man. I think a lot of some things are like illusions.
Yeah.
You know, like the illusions of safety, the illusions of happiness.
Yeah.
But sometimes I would even argue it's more contentness than anything. But I don't know. I always feel like I'm judging when I say things like that. Like sometimes
I think it's because you do music too. Like you're like an artist as well.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I feel
a little crazy though. Like I've hitchhiked before.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. I would probably never be able to do that as a woman.
Doesn't that suck?
I know. I think about that all the time. You know,
Yeah.
the guy from Into the Wild. He's like.
Yeah.
I think about that story all the time.
Yeah. I was a big fan of Kerouac, and I just sort
Cool.
of like I don't know. I couldn't afford going to college, paying for college anymore. So I was just like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Get another job, but I'll fucking hate it. So I was just, I just kind of wandered for a while.
That's the other thing. I think that there's like some sort of like back to the Big Brother thing. I know he's talking about, I forget what he calls it, the huge, like, linguistic thing, which I do believe in somewhat, because it's just, like, did it work out?
I think he's in Bluefield.
Oh my god. I'm the worst.
Why? It's not your fault that he's in Bluefield.
Sorry, buddy. I don't give, I'm the worst at directions.
So where
but
are
we
we?
will be having another guest. I think we're talking about, I mentioned Big Brother. If anyone was watching, can help me say what I said like 5 minutes ago. What were we talking about? Music, making stuff.
I remember when
not
I
letting
left.
commodification.
When I left
the art sphere.
The artists.
I was talking about Kerouac.
Kerouac, yes. Going
Road.
hitchhiking.
And then,
what do you think about that? What do you think about Kerouac?
well, I went through sort of a Kerouac obsession, and I went out on the road myself. I read On the Road. I got the. Have you ever seen? There's. You can buy the original manuscript version.
Wow.
It comes in this really cool like edition. Well, basically, Kerouac wrote On the Road, for anybody that doesn't know, back in '48, I think. It was like post World War II. A lot of people were coming home to like either no jobs. A lot of people are having to like travel and jump on trains and stuff like that and go back and forth. You know, I think we were in a depression at that time, if I'm not mistaken. And so Kerouac, being a New Yorker, would either hop in cars with his friends and travel all across the United States, or they would hitchhike, and then they eventually made their way down to Mexico. And at that time, that was a very sort of what's like rebellious thing to do. It was very, you know, I mean, it was the 40s and the 50s. It was very what's that, like the conformity of that era, I guess. So it was very just anti. And there, Jack Kerouac, along with writers like William Burroughs and who wrote Ginsberg, Allen Ginsberg, they were basically the leaders of the pack what became the beatnik movement of that era. And the beatnik movement was kind of pre-hippie 60s counterculture era. Yeah. It was sort of led into the counterculture. So I read Kerouac like a couple of years ago, and I just obsessed over it. I read On the Road several times, and then eventually I read The Dharma Bums, which is probably my favorite book by him, because that was his early sort of introduction of Buddhism into his writing. And so that sort of introduced the ideals of Buddhism to me a little bit. And I don't know, I've always been this person that never wanted to stay in one place for very long. I just like to move, I like to experience things, and I moved around a lot as a kid. I wasn't in a military family, my family was just dysfunctional as hell. And so I just always had this itch to just, you know, cause,
be somewhere else.
Yeah, and it also in moving around a lot, I've learned that you wouldn't even think it, because I've never left the country, like, you know, which sucks, because one day I will. But like, even going from Jersey to, let's say, pick any state, like the vastness of differences in the way people live, and like the way people talk, and like you would never think so just being in the same country. I can't imagine what it'd be like to go to, you know, Peru or Brazil or you know, Japan, or you know, one day I'm gonna do it, but it interests me. That's a part of experiencing life and sort of the vastness this whole experience has to offer. So yeah, I kind of like wandered around a bit, and I hitchhiked up to Buffalo, and then I took a bus to Cleveland, Ohio to see my brother graduate high school, and then I hitchhiked down to Southern Ohio where I had some friends, stayed there, hitchhiked down to Georgia where I met my sister. She bought me a bus ticket. I went to Florida, stayed with my dad. My dad kicked me out, and I lived homelessly on Miami Beach for a year and a half. That's actually where these dreads came from.
Wow.
I used to wake up on the beach every day, and honestly, I don't know what I was looking for. I was just, you know, like I was in a really weird time in my life, you know, but like, and even now, even looking back on it, like I don't really know what I found, you know, because there are still certain struggles I have in life, obviously, those never go away. I think I was looking for
answers to something. Like I've always struggled with a lot of things in life, and one thing I really struggle with are social standards. Like a lot of things that like a lot of us just sort of buy into, and now this can loop back to do we think for ourselves, because there are a lot of things like me and my girlfriend talk a lot about like if we get married, what kind of wedding we have, right? And she's sort of a little bit more. She comes from a more conservative. Well, my family's kind of old school religious community too, but like she comes from that sort of conservative mindset of, oh, I'd love the big wedding, I'd love all my family, big people there. And to me, I've had this conversation where I go, marriage to me is just a legal institution. It really doesn't mean anything in regards to how much we love each other. Like, you know, so we kind of like clash on it a little bit. And there are certain things like that are sort of the set social standards that we all sort of play into. We're all even expected to play into. And she's even told me, like, I think my family would hate if we didn't do such and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's usually the case.
Like, and a lot of, like, we also talked about would we have, if we had a child, would we get that child baptized and so on and so forth. I'm like, neither of us are religious. Why would we do that? Well, my family's Catholic. Like, and there's a lot of things that, like, a lot of us do, even me, and I'm sure all of us, people that want to hope that we think as much for ourselves as we possibly can.
Well, we've been born into that. Yeah.
Right, like there are just certain things that we just do.
Yeah.
Without even thinking. Like it's almost just like, and one thing that I find myself doing, and it was really bad when they had Facebook News, I was that Facebook News sucker.
Oh,
like, not necessarily to say that it shaped where I was thinking or anything, but that was the first thing I used to do when they had that in the morning. It was just a quick feed of what was going on to me. You know, it didn't really tell me how to think. I didn't really read articles. It was just like, all right, what happened while I was sleeping?
The dialectic,
Speaking of social media, I think that's a big reason why people are so addicted to it, is that feeling of knowing that it's always there, and it's always, something's always happening on it.
And you're always a part of it.
And you're always a part of it, and that, like, some people I think have this weird fear that they're gonna miss it, like miss out on like something that they see.
Absolutely.
You know? So.
But it's also, it's become a social standard. So when I was talking to you earlier, I told you I don't have Facebook Messenger on my phone. I just deleted Facebook and Facebook Messenger from my phone.
Nice.
And it's because I always have this weird struggle with social media, because I'll have those periods where I'll love it, because I love the internet, but it's just over time I get into weird
You do that because, you know, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I love Omniologists and, like, curating it, but, oh, God, the kind of trash I see.
Yeah, and a lot of things that just sort of get pumped at you, and it's just advertising for a new era, a new generation. I think a lot of people have figured out. And this whole weird thing with the Russia thing. Like, did you guys see, there was a big news story a couple days ago about, there's a viral video of a feminist pouring bleach all over a bunch of men spreading on a train.
Isn't that anti-feminist propaganda?
Supposedly it was a Russian propaganda video or something. It wasn't even real.
Can't trust anything.
And it's just like, but when the story came out, like every news outlet was like, you know what I mean? Like,
of course.
I got
it was
a question
extremist.
for you.
And it was local.
Which video that you have seen has shown you the truth? Ever.
Or like positive to you the truth.
I would assume something where someone, something concrete happens in the video. Maybe someone dies. I don't know.
Right. Okay, so
like a snuff film. I don't know.
So for me, some art films.
For me, some anime lately, actually. Right, you know. But for the most part, all media is manipulating you, either into like hearing out what someone is expressing, believing what someone is expressing, whatever. No.
Oh, okay. Because I can get it.
No, it's someone else.
Oh, okay.
Entirely.
Sorry, guys.
Believing what someone is expressing, And like not necessarily like manipulation. Sometimes again, like I said, just expression, right? Like sometimes like I'm sad. I want to tell you about it, or how deeply I am sad.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like I'm sad because so and so, and you need to hate them. Right? Then it's like, but then again, maybe that's important. I don't know. See, like I don't know the truth about stuff either. But I know that like media is like always an attempt at giving you an experience.
I think it's meant to give like a fake dopamine high-esque type thing.
Well, yeah.
Which is why it's like you're interacting with like strangers online, and that like the people that are really like into the fame of it all do it because they like seeing how many people, like the number equals like their little dopamine like attention, like
There's absolutely
you know?
studies that show that there's chemical reactions with
like sometimes I think I lose Instagram followers because I don't post every like single day or every minute of my life. Like I'm very like slow. Like I want to put it up because I want to put it up. I could care who likes this or looks at it. Like I just like it. I'm gonna just put it up. Some people, it's like you gotta put up like everything. You gotta sell yourself, and I'm like I'm not about that. Like I could care less. It's kind of for me at this point. Like.
But you know that's a little bit where I was going earlier. Now that I remember, with I think social media is becoming the social standard now.
Yeah.
Because I want to delete my Facebook, and I've done it a couple times over the past couple of years, and I always get back on for whatever varying reasons. Right now, it's because I can't be a musician without it.
Yeah.
I honestly can't. I can't book shows. I can't reach out to people. Like Facebook and social media is how people do it. As a matter of fact, there are so many bands, musicians that are not getting signed because of the quality of their music. They're getting signed because of how many followers they have, how many likes they have, how many.
That's why there's so much trash music out there today. No
And
offense.
like
we started.
It's like I could not get off Facebook if I tried. I couldn't possibly, not to say I'm a successful musician or anything, but I couldn't, do even the little bit that I do now.
They stole it from us.
Like it is the new social standard. I actually said like a long time ago, back when I was like 18, I remember like getting high and like telling a friend like, I think one day, man, they're gonna pull us over. The cops are gonna ask you for your Facebook URL. Like it's gonna become like a part of your ID, your identification.
Yeah.
It's gonna, we already see it now. Like you when you get a job, it's like
They search your stuff.
LinkedIn and so on and so forth, and now things are connected. People Google search your name and you took some pictures, you partying with some friends, and now you're implicated.
You're not a perfect human.
Yeah,
Stop
right?
it.
Like
Arrest
perfect
them.
humans don't drink. Like
Oh my god.
Purity.
Purity.
I just think the next the next 20 years is.
May I make a comment on that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that anything that we collectively believe holds power will. So we collectively believe that the license is a document of power of some kind. It gives me privilege to do certain things. I don't know. It's a piece of plastic with my face on it and a bad picture with information that might be true. Like, are my eyes brown though? I don't know. How brown? But whatever. So, with Facebook was becoming that thing. And then, like, it was gaining such a realm of importance because people were investing money into it to manipulate the masses, whatever, all this nonsense we all know. And then, they put it to the guillotine of shame and showed that the government, will kill Mark Zuckerberg if they want to, because, you know what I mean? Like, that's like why they put these people on TV or whatever, to show that they have the power, to get them in a room, to make them afraid, to make them feel shame or worry. Like, it's not even about what actually happens anymore.
Yeah.
Like, nothing actually happens. It's just like, but this could happen. Then
That's
I'm going to
true.
convince you that it's going to happen, and you're like, oh my god, it
And
probably
also,
could.
people
I'm done.
are paying into like social media now, like
Right.
in terms of like promoting, like that's a big deal. Like the promoting option or whatever on Facebook and whatever you use now, and you have to
that's
pay
like-
money to to in a way use it. It's like
This is something that destroyed. This is one tiny thing that helped the destruction of something I was trying to build. Right, like I'm someone who's really into community and like really being close with the people you got to know immediately around you. I got so much flack for like booking bands that I didn't even know that weren't even good. I didn't care, but they were around here and like awesome. Like we can be friends now. We all make music now, you know. Like that got me like whatever. That's like not the point. But what was the point I was trying to make about this?
Facebook.
Right, bringing all these people together. Facebook. Playing music. What did you say before? Why I was going on this tangent?
Paying into it, promoting.
Oh, promoting, right. Okay, so all of a sudden you're getting people watching what you're doing that don't actually care about what's actually happening. Right? They don't care about your band because like you're a psychedelic funk group. They like your band because like Johnny liked it. You know what I mean? And like Johnny and also this girl that you you have a crush on also likes it, so you should probably check out this band so that you know about it. Next time you talk to Johnny and this girl you like, you know something about this band, right? And like that's how bands even get popular to begin with. They're part of the dialogue. Doesn't mean they're good. There's so many awful bands who are produced so well that should not be on, like everyone deserves a stage, you know. But in my opinion, do not deserve the popularity that they get. Unfortunately, our guest feels that he cannot make it.
Aww, that was a bummer.
Did he get the wrong address, or?
Yes, he ended up in West Orange and
man.
now is low on gas and feels insecure. Sorry.
Can you tell him it's okay to invite
Yes.
the next one?
Yes,
And that
yes.
I will send him an Omniologist
Yes,
shirt?
yes.
I'm not Chris. I'm like, I'm gonna bake you cookies. You know, I asked you to. I feel so bad. Anyways. So, Matt, what movie are you watching tonight?
But
I'm
yeah,
not
so
watching a movie. I'm watching The Haunting of Hill House.
I
on-
heard that
on
was
Netflix.
like disturbing.
It's not disturbing yet.
No. Okay.
At least not for me.
All right.
Nothing yet. No, it seems decent.
Cool.
It's decent. Watch The Apostle though on Netflix.
Everybody listen to that.
Good horror movie. Solid horror movie.
The Apostle.
Nice.
The
I'm always
Apostle.
looking for good hard
It's
movies.
do you know Dan Stevens?
No.
No, he was in one of the FX like do you know what the FX show? It's like superheroes, Marvel style.
8.
It wasn't Heroes.
Not Heroes, right?
I'm so
No,
bad.
no, it's not Heroes. It's not Heroes.
So
I don't know.
Didn't that have Aubrey Plaza in it?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, I didn't see the show, but yeah.
It's solid, like well shot, freaky, good actors.
You're a movie guy.
Yeah, you're a movie guy. But
Yeah.
you just told us about The Apostle, so you're
So-
telling us.
Alright, I'm
The
watching that
Apostle
tonight.
is good. Solid.
Alright, that's
Check it out.
that's the
We're gonna check
tidbit.
it out.
That's the tidbit. Alright,
Yeah.
good. The Apostle's good, everybody. Watch it tonight.
If you don't watch it tonight, I'm kicking you out
I
of the
heard Big Mouth. Big Mouth.
Big Mouth is
Big
good.
Mouth
yeah.
is good,
My
too.
girlfriend loves
Alright.
that show.
Separate
Oh,
genre.
yeah.
Separate tangent, Big Mouth.
But yeah, Big Mouth.
Cool.
Shout out to Netflix.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like all of a sudden the fabric of what I was creating was being destroyed because suddenly it was like people were entering into not they were bad or anything. It's just like they were not interested in the reasons why I was doing what I was doing. You know, they were interested more so in being cool or being
Well, that's
whatever.
the problem
Yeah,
with
and that's
art.
just what happens.
That
Yeah,
just
that's
happens.
just what happens. And
Yeah.
then and I think that's like when you're promoting to random people, like without meaning, you know, that's like why I think a lot of like, you know, like punks, like for instance, have a criticism of like propaganda is because it's not actually about you. It doesn't care about you. You know what I mean? It's not actually for you. It's to manipulate you. It's to exploit you. It's to take control of you, you know? And like that,
Well, I
there's
feel
like
like
something to be said for that.
there's a time when we had music that was like, I guess because it was pre-internet, going to a show and like listening to what they had to say, that was like a protest. Like that was a revolutionary
Yeah,
like,
just being able to
thing
do that
to like
alone.
experience it. But now there's like no reason to have a meaning. So music isn't really about the meaning. It's about like, you know, this. I think it's a really warped idea of like individualism, like strength in being like an individual. But these people are the people that are like exploiting you and like making you believe in like a right lifestyle, but like telling you be yourself, but like But
Only this
but in
way.
real life, you know, they wouldn't be friends with you unless you were like a weird, cool, like, you know, they wouldn't be friends. I love everybody. You like my money. Like that's it's like so. But then again, it's like people power. Like, you know, I'll never know what people are
that
like.
conversation gets so weird. 'Cause,
Yeah.
you know, one of the bands that I love that has been heavily criticized for that, Rage Against the Machine, got
I
so
love that
big,
band.
and then, you know, people were like, well, how can you be so anti-corporate, anti-money, and yet,
Yeah.
you know, you're playing, you know, award shows, and you're selling, you know, millions of records, and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I mean, that's a weird conversation, because...
Well, I think often the resistance gets subverted in order to justify the existence of what they're opposing, right? Like, by having legitimate opposition, that means that you're real. That's all that means. That, like, you know, like, so that's one reason why I'm trying to write, like, anarchistic jazz punk songs or something, whatever that means. But I'm realizing, like, the more I talk about how much I hate authority in the government, the more I validate its existence. So maybe I should talk about cats or something. You know what I mean? Because, like, that's, like, more anarchistic in praxis. Because then I'm, like, not even giving them a platform to exist, which is what I'm trying to shut down, you know?
Well, I think that right now it would make sense to also like make music about that, because the only one that does exist right now is
Sold to them.
But that's the thing. It's like you might as well just give them another one, a different one. Don't like leave them
Or
with
my
the,
own.
but
Or
don't
just, like,
leave
my
them with
own.
the trash. Like help them
Yeah,
be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, you know, like
Yeah.
there's another like way, and then cats, because cats are great
Yeah,
too.
right, of course. Yeah, the cats.
Like
can
hear
be
me
that way.
out, but like I'm not gonna like make this like I don't know, you know.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I feel like this is going into a whole nother rabbit hole a little bit.
Well,
I
we
find
got
it...
40 more minutes of awesome.
I don't know how long my
Oh, yeah?
phone battery is, but it should be okay.
Yeah, we're good.
It
We got
dies.
Lots of time.
I'm
so
sorry.
go down the rabbit hole.
All right, cool. So, anarchism.
Yeah, yes. Oh, yeah.
Because, okay, so, anarchism.
Already.
It's fascinating.
Yes.
Now,
Doesn't make
I
sense.
know anarchism is not, it's a lot more complex than just no
What is it?
government. Or maybe it's not. I know there's varying different ideas of anarchism. I've read enough on it to know that.
Yeah.
Not to just sit here and be one of those
Yeah.
people that's just like, oh, you want no government, huh?
Yeah.
So, anyway, I guess when it comes to, and sort of the rhetoric when people talk about forms of government or forms of, like, I guess, financial systems and such,
Yeah.
in order to sort of have a sort of conviction in believing, well, I believe that socialism would work, or I believe that communism would work, or so on and so forth. Like, these systems do have to sort of interact with the people. They're sort of dependent on their environment to a certain point. So you have to sort of question a lot of things, like a chicken and egg thing. Like, for example, like us here in America, we could never take, I don't know, a dictator. Well, never mind. We could never take communism because maybe we're too selfish as consumers. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
but obviously that sort of selfish consumer culture is bred out of what we've. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes, absolutely.
like
I got
I guess I'm applying to, like, how do you have a conviction in certain things? Not even just a sort of like a.
Yeah.
I'm using a governmental system as an example, but like a lot of people will like hold fast to certain things, but in reality they're basing it on the idea of people would react the way that I expect them to react to this. You know what I mean? If God showed up tomorrow, everybody would bow down to him, kind of thing. Like, probably not.
I think that, okay, anarchism in general is easy to shut down because it's so easy to talk about, like, doing whatever you want, then resorting to violence, then whatever. You know, or resorting to, like, poor behavior. It's, like, so easy that's why it gets a bad rap in general.
Yeah, same with, like, socialism. People are so quick to say that, no, people are to this.
Yeah, all
That's
of
why
them have that thing about them. You know, all of the political views. Okay, so that's one reason why I'm an anarchist, by the way. But anyway, so when I talk about being an anarchist or an anarchist thinker, it means that I believe that we live. Okay. I do not believe that we will be able to comprehend the state of order that exists in our world. Like, actually comprehend it because we are finite. Therefore, we live in a world of chaos. Like, there may be patterns, there may be order, we may be able to get a glimpse and manipulate it to our benefit, but there are so many factors, and we are so powerless against the chaotic inevitability of things, like all the things we've been talking about just now, that it's like to say that, for anyone to say that they are a governing authority over your experience in any way can shove it. That's pretty much that's kind of what I mean when I mean being an anarchist. Now, I also mean being autonomous, and I also mean that is the most important goal. This is the actual philosophy, like government part of my view. That was the philosophical one first. This is the government one, which is people are born into the world because two people figured out a way to be self-sufficient enough to not only to like each other, then procreate, then continue to exist for 9+ months, give birth to something, and then it became conscious. Then it started to walk. Then it would talk, right? So like all of those things require a huge series of autonomy necessary to exist, which is now provided for us by institutions, right? The institution usually is your community, right? The first community is your parents. The second is whatever is beyond that. And then it's, they say the state. Then it's God. Now it's somewhere in between all those is the corporation. Now there is no God. Now there's space. Now it's all very confusing, right? Well, it's like that's the truth anyway. Before there was God, it was confusing. Now there's no God, so it's confusing again. So to me that means there never was all that. To me that just proves every single religious institution of the past is a lie because it's still confusing. And how long have they existed? And for how long have they all been debunked and used to exploit masses? It's all a lie. It clearly is. But in order to understand all of that, you have to care about religion. You have to care about God. You have to care about all these things to even learn about those things, to know people who even believe in those things. Like, all of that requires autonomy, right? And, that is, to me, what anarchism is about. Focusing on what makes you happy so that you can continue to exist. Everything else becomes secondary, right? Because, you're not even useful as a worker if you're not a happy, fit, or whatever, happy, fit person. And you're not going to be a happy, fit person unless you can meet not only a set of physical needs, but psychological needs, in my opinion. Today, both of those things are provided for you by the state, or maybe. I don't know. They're provided for you to some degree by whoever is taking, whoever's making the milk, whoever's making all the food that gets here. It's food and all our basic needs are provided for us by some invisible force, right? That is provided for us by money, and we say okay because it's easy, right? But is it really good for us? And okay,
so it's like a perpetuation of this embedded blind faith we have in the system.
Not even. It's
because we were born into it. Is why
right.
though. Is
we're
what I'm
born
trying
into
to say.
It, and we continue existing in it because we were born into it anyway.
And we don't see
I
any.
I don't think we have a choice.
And we don't see any good
Can't really opt out, can you? Even if you
well, yeah, I think that if you
you can,
learn
but
how to
that
do it
requires
yourself.
a lot of conflict that most people don't want to participate in, right? Why would you continue? What kind of convictions do you have that you're going to go out there and be your own person?
See, I do feel that way about medical stuff, which pisses me off. That there's rando people that shit on the toilet like you do too. That have access to machines and chemicals to make life-saving things, but if God forbid you needed something one day, you can just pop there's a good chance you might die because you don't have access to that, and that's fucked up to me,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can I say something really weird?
Yeah.
I don't know why this just popped into my head. I guess this is kind of going into technology a little bit. So my girlfriend, I guess she may have read like an article or something. Turns to me and she goes, "Hey, so they're coming out with some sort of like earpiece that will translate different languages to you in real time."
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what I said to her. I turned to her and I go, "We didn't even already have that?" And she's like, "Yeah, right?" And I told her, I was like, "This is gonna sound really stupid, but for some reason when I was a kid, every time I thought about the United Nations or a bunch of countries getting together, I imagined all of them had earpieces that just, like translated this to them in real time." And then we kind of started going on this conversation about like, yeah, you would almost think that like with the amount of varying languages and dialects and the way people think that something like that would be around.
Speak English.
Yeah.
That too.
That's what
I guess
because
that
I
is
think
a big
English
thing.
is it's invented language of modern language that people manipulate and control.
Okay.
Like, I studied linguistics in college
Oh,
for a while.
You're like Noam Chomsky, huh?
Well, he was an anarchistic thinker, man.
No,
right?
he's like
But he's not. Yeah, but
Not
like,
anymore?
well, no, it's like
He's
his
definitely been quoted
views.
that he's just like, yeah,
Like
anarchy
anarchists
will
like
work
a
out.
lot of what he says because he talks about what they believe is close to the truth, but he doesn't necessarily.
I think he sees like it as an at this point it's
Impractical,
kind of
right?
like impractical in terms of like survival wise.
Mm-hmm.
That was one reason why I was interested in him.
You know, the fact that the internet is so like you turn off the internet and we could all die type of situation.
The reason why that piece of device scares me
Mm-hmm.
is because each person you meet, you begin a new language with them, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just sat here defining anarchy with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you and I now have a definition of anarchy that now Barbara also has. Like her and I talk about anarchy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But now
It's like
you
our
and I,
own understanding of it
right?
in this situation for
Right.
what we're talking
And
about.
now you and I had a conversation about anarchy that Barbara was here to hear. So now she has an even more nuanced view of it. You and I have a nuanced view of it that's different. You see, and that's like what happens to each person. The words you use to have like, I think, psychological meaning. So, let's say you only spoke French and I speak English, and you're teaching me French, and I like teach you mango, and that's our first experience. You know, like mango. You know, like how to say it, what to say, the way you say it. That's an experience that is literally robbed from you now because I sound like such a Luddite. But anyway, so like because your phone is instead controlling the dialect, right, and telling you that person said this, respond.
I think we put too much faith in the technology because we don't see it as like a human thing. We see it as this like
Well, we're removing
machine,
body language
yeah.
as a necessary means of communication, which it is.
that is true.
Because that's how a lot of conflicts are resolved. I can say all the mean words in the world to you, but based on my body language, you'll know whether or not I mean them or not.
So, but here's what sucks though. Are we all sitting around like grumpy old people going, "Oh, I wish things
I don't think so.
were the way they used to be"? Or is this just simply a shift in almost like the sort of social collective, you know, almost like social consciousness in a way?
I think they want you to think that. I think it was just TV too.
Yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying. I do find it a
But that's
little
also my
unsettling,
bias.
this sort of integration with technology. I mean, it's the Matrix. We're getting there. I know it's, you know, it sounds stupid, but...
Not really.
I think we were fed a fantasy for too long that like a lot of people that were ignorant actually believed in,
Yeah.
which maybe wasn't the truth of it
Because
at
they
all.
depended on it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they believed in it to the point where it was depended on, and I feel like, you know, even though it might have not have been true, that right now it's like we were talking about the other day, like the Wizard of Oz and the guy behind the curtain. It's like that now. You know, it's like we came this far just to find that there's like, you know, that kind of situation, maybe. And that it is kind of a shift in the consciousness, but it's also at the timing that it happened, I think it was like the nihilism culture just like was the way it happened. It was to keep us suppressed and to keep us from ever imagining that we could ever get it anywhere close to where we want it to be. You know? Like, no one will actually go outside and do something because they see people dying on Facebook all the time for doing the same thing. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen, like, kids get, like, you know, so, like, nobody wants to stand up at all because everybody, like, doesn't, like, I don't think they want to die, but...
Yeah.
And you see other countries where people, like, are putting them, like, they are going out and they are, like, sacrificing themselves because of the standards that they live in. So it's... And that's a reality, too. It's not like it's made up, or who knows, it could be made up. But I don't think it's made up. But and we're looking at it, and we're sitting on the couch, so I think that's all just very unnatural, like, weird, kind of technological...
Yeah. I think those
we don't know
things
how to
happen.
comprehend it. I think that's our problem right now, is that we're angry and we don't know what to do,
Right.
and that's it.
And those things happen because we don't have deep relationships with our communities anymore.
Yes. That too.
Right? Like, I wouldn't be so riled up. Like, I think that if we had deeper relationships with our immediate communities and people around us, we would want everything to be better for everyone around us. Instead, I think there is this thing called the state, which tries to say it's always above us, you know what I mean? And, like, doing
Us
things
and
that are
them.
better for us or whatever. You know, it's all, like, a tangled web of nonsense. That creates instead competition between us.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and being who's going to be more good. That's why the police are here. The police are the only sign of the state in your community. Like your municipality, arguably, is your local governments, the people who are in your community. You hope, right? But the police are a state institution. Well, from what I understand, a lot of the people who are police in like your town or our town don't even live in the town that they are police. So like, what use are you to me anyway? You don't even know what's going on.
Exactly.
You don't even know who we are. You don't even care
Who
about
watches
us.
the watch?
You're just here to instill the state's bidding, you know, and like and they're there to, and the state is always here to subvert acts of conflict or violence, and so, of course, a community will have a militia. That's just what they do. They eventually get a militia, you know, and the police are our militia, and they gave us our militia before we made one.
See,
Does that make sense?
that's what I was talking about with like these systems being. I think that they can like, or maybe the computers that they use, or some sort of like information data gathering, that they can always predict what our next subversion will be, what we will give into next, what the next trends will be, right?
Well, not everyone, just the mass. It's
Oh,
always.
well,
and
did
if
you? I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but
go ahead.
like the Cambridge Analytics thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I was talking to somebody. So a buddy of mine is like he's ex-military. I believe he was a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Cool.
And like so he's like really heavily invested in politics. So I sort of take that he just
Cool,
knows
yeah.
people and things. So I just take
I
what
talk to
he
him all
says
the
with a
time.
certain weight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like he was telling me all about Cambridge Analytics, and then he started talking to me about the connection of Cambridge Analytics to the Trump campaign, and then he pointed out to me that Drain the Swamp,
Yeah.
like that whole thing, like certain phrases and stuff that he used, he was told to say these things.
Mm-hmm.
By Steve Bannon, that's who it is.
Yeah.
All these people are somehow
Controlling
connected.
the dialogue, the dialect.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating because he pulled out his phone and showed me a clip of Donald Trump the first time he said "drain the swamp," and he was like, "Yeah, they're telling me to say drain the swamp and blah blah," and then like the next day he's just like, "Yeah, I said it." People just went crazy. It's almost like like you said, it's almost like an algorithm of some sort that.
Well, it's
just
because
pays
then we
attention to-
validate it whether or not it's true or not. So, like, if they pose an idea, let's just say something crazy, like, this is gonna sound really bad. Like, for instance, if Trump says tomorrow all immigrants will be deported tonight, right, from the United States, it doesn't matter if that's true or not. That's obviously like,
Like how the hell would you? do that,
yeah,
right?
exactly. It's
people will
ridiculous.
start busting out.
But
Going
that's the
fucking
thing is
crazy,
like
yeah.
we will act on the behalf of the story, you know.
Right.
You know
Like,
what
it's
would be
real.
fucked up if that happened? I feel like, oh god, that would be anarchy. Well, in the worst sense, you
Right,
know,
right.
because
Well, it would
It would be a
expose.
very surreal situation.
You're right. It would
Yeah.
create a moment of chaos.
Because
right?
I think then civilians would want to take on.
See,
that.
that's the other thing too,
Whoa.
and they wouldn't have to lift a finger because it would
Yeah.
just be all us.
Yeah, like we all
doing
would just go
all
crazy.
the work.
Yeah.
I feel like we're already kind of good.
I want to
But
just say
well,
something.
okay, so instead of actually dealing with people's mental illness, like letting them go deal with their own conflicts, like, wow, that person's a psychopath, we have to get rid of them now. Like, you know, instead we suppress these mental illnesses and like try to suppress their behavior and let other people take care of it. So now you're surrounded by sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, tons of people with crazy mental illnesses that just because they go to work, comply with society, blah blah blah, is like one reason I was into Batman. You know, like he sort of like sees these people because like he was affected by them. You know, like that's sort of his narrative. And he's like one angle in the popular media that exposes this truth, like not on purpose, but exposes this truth about society, is that society creates the villains because like the end game of the Batman narrative is that he should be fighting the state because the state creates the mentally ill. Like, you know, the situation that is Gotham City or whatever situation even created the political state that was Gotham City is ultimately to blame, right? But of course they're not going to take that philosophy all the way because then the common man, right, instead they create the Joker to subvert that whole angle, in my opinion. Wow.
Maybe that's why it's a Joker, because it's all a parody.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
It's actually a big
But anyways,
joke, yeah.
right, but instead these conflicts
Sorry.
should just be happening because then we'll resolve them, you know, and like
Well, see,
within the
right now
community.
we're in like the Twilight of the Idols, and we're also in symbolism, where I think that like I just read this part in Agony of Power where he said that I forgot when this happened. I think during when he's mentioning he referenced Schwarzenegger being governor of California or whatever, and how at that point we kind of like admitted or like gave up and we're just like, yes, we want an image. We want to like believe in the image. Like we will worship the image if you give us one, but like then we'll also kill it too. So like here you go with what you're talking about. That it's all just like we can't do our own conflicts because it doesn't feel good enough to us unless we're on a grand symbolic like you know, just that would mean change to us if we saw like the toppling of like a giant system rather than just like the guy that like we think is like, you know,
but
the person
my
we're in
view
conflict
and the reason
with.
again why I'm an anarchist is because there is no giant system. It's just they're convincing you that they are president and they have like the guns and the people convinced that that's what's happening.
Didn't social media make us feel that way because because it showed us like all the people that are connected together for this one big idea? But who knows if it's like, you know, if it was given to them all. Like other countries, I'm sure their social media might be different, where certain things are like blocked and you can't see. I mean, they're doing that with our social media. So it's not to say that it's a cohesive idea, and that's why things don't work. Because you ask people after Occupy Wall Street, after Women's March, what's next, and everyone had a different idea of what it was to them. They all show up, and you're like, "What's next?" And you're like, "Well, we don't know because there was never unity."
Well, it's what you said at the beginning is the rabbit hole. No,
Keep
you're
getting,
right. You're right, but instead our version of the internet is not necessarily edited. It's just like overly pleasurable.
Oh, yeah.
So you go down the rabbit hole of your views, like you said at the beginning of this whole thing. You go down the rabbit hole of your views to feel safe, comfort, and then you're just in your own rabbit hole of nonsense. And then you create a hate group band.
Yeah, that's the worst. That's the weirdest part about the internet. I used to be one of those like really. I used to love the internet. I mean, I still do.
The internet,
I still do, but like the whole thing, like, you know, and growing up as sort of like, you know, the generation that really like we were the first, you know. But like, you would expect people to be so much more smarter. It seems like
I think
we're getting
that was our
dumber. It's weird.
expectation.
Yeah.
So I think we linked technology to intelligence.
Yeah.
Well,
You
it's
know,
not so much
like
that. It's just on a basic,
Like
very
access.
logic scale.
Yeah.
We have the power, the ability to almost look up just about anything in the palm of our hands within seconds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, what's true and what's not, how to identify a proper source and so on and so forth, like we can get into that, but like just the ability. I mean, like I remember one day me and my dad were having a conversation, and he swore up and down to know the year that Bob Marley died, I can't remember for the life of me what year it was now. But like I remember going, no, I'm pretty sure it was like the 70s or something like that, and like early 70s. And I looked up the date right then and there and proved them wrong. And it's like I'm sitting here thinking like I always hate making this argument because it's a strange argument, but it's one I like to make because I'd like to make that with I'd like to think that with every generation we're getting a little bit smarter. You know, the younger people are getting a little bit smarter, and we feel it like the
Maybe
fact
that's
that
where
we're
the
having these
nihilism culture
conversations.
comes from.
Nihilism,
Just
you
being too
say?
smart and feeling like you're giving up because you're like, I've seen so much and it's terrible.
That's something that you said. I find myself
Like I see
falling
little
into
kids
the
that like
niche.
make like suicide jokes, and I'm like, you know, like the depressing memes, like I'm just gonna kill myself today, like that. No offense to people with actual depression, but when I hear kids like jokingly saying that, I'm just like,
I think that's through the ages. I remember the
Like,
emo thing when I
know.
was younger, man. But you know, that was a big thing. Everybody thought they were cool for cutting themselves. I mean, fads come and go.
That's like okay. Well, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
no, now we just
But
do a lot of drugs.
so imagine that
Drugs are
situation
cool, though.
where your dad is saying, like, you know, Bob Marley died like in 1960. You said 1970. Maybe who cares? It's to say he said Bob Marley died in 1960, and he's been saying that to like people for the past 10, 20 years, let's say. And now you come along with your smartphone saying, nope, that's not what my smartphone says. This is why all of our parents' generation hate us, because they have been repeating the same lies over and over and over, and not knowing they are lies, right? Over and over and over again, so much so that they facilitated some sort of foundation for their existence for a very long time.
Do you think it was also the social stigma of like having an opposing idea to that? So like, not saying that the Bob Marley thing,
Wow,
but
that's a
imagine
whole
like
good
having
angle, yeah.
because I mean I feel like I feel like my own like experience with my family, and my mom grew up, I guess like during, you know, she was born in the 50s, so she kind of grew up in the 60s and the 70s, and it's like I think a lot of what you're meant to like uphold with your like beliefs or whatever, you like can't openly be open about who you are, because especially around then they were like, you have to be, you know, the Americana, like perfect white picket fence imagery, but you know, oh man. So just
Puritanical
now,
nonsense.
and that's why now I'm sure they really don't want to like admit that they were wrong or anything, because their whole life is built on that lie. And if anything, I think they feel like almost like, oh crap. And especially those baby boomer people that are being like openly like called out against. But I'm sure like there's some really good people out there being like, no man, I'm sorry that like my like the whole thing is in that kind of direction. But
yeah. Well, okay. So here's what I think. Here's what I think.
So sad.
Right. This is gonna get me like set on fire. I say this every time right before I'm gonna say it, but I'm gonna say it one more time. I think that our generation, not our generation, our parents' generation, were pushed towards their narcissistic qualities, especially through media. Like they were pushed to be as narcissistic as possible, to be self-absorbed, to do whatever they wanted.
Undiagnosed mental illnesses, generational mental illness that wasn't openly discussed or treated ever.
Which is like
we're
what I
the
talked about
first
before.
generation to be open about our differences like this, and our mental, or any like like all this like new sexuality, like all those higher concepts are just coming out like in the open now. I think.
That's what sucks when like just media just takes beautiful things and just smothers it to death, man.
Exploits it dry.
I keep telling
Modifies
people
it
like
dry.
people get so butthurt when they're on an opposite side of the fence of a certain view. That's a lot of people are talking about feminism. A lot of people are talking about Black Lives Matter. A lot of people are talking about just think of anything, and like in my opinion, I see it as kind of beautiful. Whether or not I agree with it, it's not really what's important. But I do think that, and especially our generation, is sort of leading the pack on posing these really broad philosophical concepts. When it comes to feminism, for instance, it's the first time in some regards that feminism is sort of addressing certain social standards that just don't fucking work in 2018 anymore. You know what I mean? And finally people are going, oh no, we're not doing that anymore. You know, and people are getting away with shit. you know, and that's happening a lot. But instead, like, the media figures out a way to market it. You know what I mean? Pump it down your throat, and then you have people over here telling you what it is, but distorting the truth of it, and then it becomes this twisted narrative, and now it's simply a fashion accessory.
Right,
and
and
now
then all the
can-
feminists are gone.
Right.
And
And
that's why it's so much
it's like-
harder work for people to like just validate our right to
it
existence.
just
Yeah.
suppresses
As,
everything
like, a
that's
human.
real. It's like,
Yeah.
so then if everything
You have to work so
around the
hard.
real is so fake, how the fuck can we possibly think for ourselves?
Mhm.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I
By
think
doing
it's-
this at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
Independent media. I
Yeah.
think that's the way. That's the way.
To me, I think it's deeper relationships, you know, and new experiences. You know.
Yeah, we're winding down anyway, so let's answer that question.
Oh yeah. So what was the ultimate question of today's talk?
Well, it's kind of
do
like,
we
do we
think
think
of
for
ourselves
ourselves, and like, how do you?
I guess in a world that's so aggressively kind of trying to construct things that are fake, sort of like a false reality, how can we possibly think for ourselves? How can we possibly even think that we do think for ourselves?
Yeah.
Like, what is thinking for yourself at that point, I guess, if that makes any sense. I
What
know
do
it's
you
such a...
What do you think?
Me
Give us your
personally-
Yeah, we'll do a
chance
round.
in the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll each give our
Well,
chance.
okay, so I think this is man. This is one of those things I feel like I could write a book about it and not
Many
Mhm.
people have.
It's
really
one of
written
those
it.
topics.
Many
Yeah.
people.
I think education is a big thing, and not necessarily within the context of our educational system, because
Mhm.
there are flaws in our educational system that I just find unacceptable. And you kind of talked about it earlier. Personally, like, I had a professor. I asked her once in an English class once what she thought of the education system. She said she felt that instead of like pumping out intellectuals, it was pumping out a subservient workforce.
Yes.
That was like the greatest thing I've ever heard, and kind of changed my perception of the education system.
Definitely.
So when I
agree with
say education, I'm more so talking about giving people the intellectual tools to navigate through society and build community, you know, see the importance in building communities, being social, having experiences, right?
Mhm.
And a part of that education is simply teaching people to critically think.
Yes.
When you critically think, not you don't think so selfishly as to only be seeing your perspective. You acknowledge that there isn't only your perspective,
Mhm.
and you also see and practice a bit of nuance and realize that sometimes things aren't always black and white. Sometimes it's not just liberal conservative. Sometimes it's not just I don't know, Christian and Muslim, or what,
Yeah.
you know, us versus them. Sometimes there are very complex nuances of philosophies that go into these things. So I really think it just comes down to being able to do your due diligence and sifting through the bullshit.
Mm.
And that's my brick wall where I come and stop, because I know I consume bullshit just like everybody else does. You know, there's a lot of mindless things that I do, a lot of things that, you know, I fill my time with that I know I'm just kind of like, this is such a waste. You know, I can do better. Like, we're all sort of falling victim to it, and I don't quite know how to do it, but I think we all, I think it's the hedonness in me. We all should be searching for that feeling of fulfillment, that feeling of, like, I don't know what it is, but to me it's just like, there are certain moments in time where I'm like, okay, this is exactly where I need to be, you know?
Yeah.
And
Time well spent in your one soul experience here.
exactly, and I only see it as one experience. I see it
Yeah.
when I'm
Same.
dead and gone. That's it.
You
But
as
that's what
yourself
I
will be
believe.
gone,
Yeah,
so
so
you
I
might as
don't believe
Yeah.
like, you know, high heaven afterwards. So I'm like, I gotta make the best of it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I think that you think for yourself sometimes. You know, I think to be a conscious being is one, maybe an accident. You know, like to be a conscious human, the way we're conscious today, might be an accident. But in order to be at a place where you're conscious and actually making like really autonomous decisions, I think doesn't happen all that often. And sometimes you make a real decision and then an inevitable string of events occurs. You know, like, and then are you really autonomous when, you know, like, you decide to set your house on fire and you're in the middle of it? Like, in the moment, maybe you may have actually decided that, but then after that, you don't, you know? So I think there are moments of free will, and therefore there are times of states of consciousness where, yes, you can think for yourself, but to be well-rested, fed, secured, loved, and motivated to get all those things in one person, real hard. You know?
It is.
I think it's a balance, because I do think that it's good praxis, because I also like think autonomy is like probably is the most important thing, and I think that you have to take that effort to continuously establish your autonomous convictions of like why you even do what you do, so that even when you are aware of the things that you're doing that might be, so for instance, I mean, I go to work, I make the paper to put the, you know, gas in the car to take me to the place I want to go, but it's just like, at the same time, I think it's like having an awareness of the way you make your decisions is important. I think that also ties into like the way you, the kind of relationships you have, and like how you want to build. I also think having deep relationships is important, because I think that also helps towards an autonomy. I think that constantly having somebody or an experience to reflect on builds your autonomous convictions up, because you're adding more experiential truth and knowledge to your decision making, so that each time, I mean, I know I fucked up a lot of shit probably up until this point in my life, which hasn't been a long time, but enough to like make that, you know, have that idea about it. So I think though that each time, like at least by now, I think that I can reflect on those things and realize like why I do the stuff I do and why I care about the stuff I care about. I feel like when I was younger, I was also a very nonconformist. I grew up in an area that was very different, like personality-wise, you know, like to me, racial, like everything. I just felt very outcasted. So a lot of my life has been spent having to like, for kind of like a social survival, focus on who I am and why I care about what I care about, you know? So I think that there's a balance to like knowing what what everybody thinks, knowing what I do in my own actions that are those things, like going to work and, you know, the conformist shit. And then also being somewhat aware of the things I care about, so that I always have that thing to kind of revert back to, and how much of the other thing am I doing that's not me. And then I usually stop that stuff when I feel like I'm being exploited, or I'm at a job that like I can tell me going every day would be conformist. I kind of like just stop it. It's not worth my happiness. Like, I also agree I get one chance to be Barbara on this world. So I want it to be like doing something I enjoy, you know? There's so many people that I know that like die suddenly, and I know that's like a very cliche thing to say, but that's really something important to me, is always knowing why you do what you do.
I so agree.
Yeah.
So agree.
Because not enough people know.
I know.
That's people, and they're like, I don't know.
I know.
What do you like? I like everything. I don't know.
I
It's
have
just
someone
like,
I work at, and I'm like,
Like, who's thinking for you at that point? Because you're not thinking for yourself. That's your
Yeah. So, anyways, that was a great talk.
Yeah.
My battery didn't die, so that was a good sign.
would you like to introduce yourself once more?
Oh, if there's any last something you want to tell
if there's
people
some-
about,
yeah,
projects or anything, you'll put links in the description afterwards.
I don't know, man.
His comic.
Tell us your name
Yeah.
again.
My name's Ray. I play as Dead Language, music, like psych, experimental rock, cool stuff, boring stuff. Whatever. It's all good fun. I'm also an artist. I make a comic called Autumn Come Down about the daughter of Satan. And yeah, I guess that's really about it, man. Life's
Who's
good.
the mom of Satan? Or who's the mom of this person?
So
Find out.
Yeah.
Thank you guys again. I'm always very thankful for people who watch this. This is just a social experiment that I'm happy people are interested in. So thank you. You can check the page and watch the other ones. If you want to be a part of it, if you're local or know me or something, please come. I'm always looking for new guests. I'm always looking for, people that have something to say. Let's chill times here, so